citizens of the United States, Christians and non-believers. The true enemy is dividing you. Lay your swords for a moment, and let an agreement be drawn. You are a Christian nation. You are a non-believer nation. You are a Muslim nation. You are a nation of all who believe in strength, knowledge, and in liberty. At the end of each day, no matter what you believe, we spill the same blood. We are all brother and sister. Whether or not you think of each other as a sinner, we are one. You also have another aspect in common. You are slaves. You are being toyed. Your economy being sucked dry, largely at the expense of the middle and poor class. Whatever view you may have, religion is a tool for the government to keep you divided. Don't you see? In arguing against each other over science and intelligent design, in which every case turns out to be the same. What we don't find in disputing with one another online and in person is productivity. What we don't find is that most do not agree to disagree. Instead of arguing going anywhere, what we do find is people bashing themselves into an unshakable wall. We do find it is us ripping each other apart, dividing and confusing one another. We will see by setting aside our differences that it happens no more. We do find that you are shielded from realizing that we are all citizens of the United States, and we share a common ground. We are people, and we are the people. The body politic. We are sidetracked from recognizing that we all have a common enemy with a malign agenda to weaken our government, who we must fight, or that enemy will beat you to your knees. While we argue, they laugh and sip greed while your constitution is being burned to crisps, and while your government derails to greedy Zionists. You still stand divided, every one of you. American believers and non-believers alike, the body politic, each have an enemy, a common ground. That enemy shares what seems like an omnipotent power in your government who has been able to grip key positions in politics, who control your intellectual and spiritual lives. A power that has been able to monitor all citizens of the United States. An enemy that marries within the family to keep the wealth in the family. An enemy that Germany faced prior to World War II. An enemy who exterminated people of Middle Eastern descent to make room for an illegal nation. This enemy holds one of the top most influential lobby groups in the U.S. Congress and the British Parliament, AIPAC. American-Israel Public Affairs Committee, a lobby for a foreign nation. The ones who law control of the wealthiest banking systems in the world. The ones who law control of the mainstream media. The ones who elect and endorse candidates invaluable to the Constitution like Mitt Romney. The ones who lock the chances of good men from earning the title president. The ones who bribe congressmen to vote on behalf of corporate interests. The ones who have shelved us beneath their interests. And the ones who wish to suck your idea of liberty dry. They are not the ones who will hand you the truth. They are the Zionists who are the real enemy of the United States government and her people. They do in fact care less to send your young, brave and loyal soldiers, sons and daughters, atheists and Christians of the United States military to their deaths, namely an air war against the civilian population, beneath the deceptive slogan of a war against military objectives. They are the ones who pilot policemen and women to cruelly sabotage the freedoms of the American people. They are the ones who found political bodyguards that represent war as something to be yearned for and hence wish to bolster business. They are the ones who say that people who stand for liberty are traitors in order to eliminate their internal resistance to their criminal policy of war. They are the ones who are your common enemy. The fact they intervene with the Middle East, sending American men and women to risk their lives and their families for a war that cannot be won. And the fact the American taxpayer is funding for this on any level demonstrates their concern for your life, and therefore constitutes an act of war on the American people. The differences of believers and non-believers must be withdrawn. Christians, you must realize, we are equal. And what you will find is that the evil and suffering in the world is not due to non-believers, Buddhists, or Muslims, but a source fundamentally much closer to you. Yes. Join your brothers and sisters and many in arms against Zionism, and let yourselves unite. The citizens of the United States cannot be defeated when united. Your founding fathers were a small group who set the course of change for the entire nation, who compromised their differences. Let us draw swords together against your government and restore the real America. Let us fight Zionists, greedy financial magnates and politicians locking control of the American politic. Back off. Surrender the Constitution in its original form to the people, or else this war will end in the shattering of one of the two warring parties. AIPAC may know this to be the people of the United States, but we know it to be all Zionists. We are not fucking playing. We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. AIPAC, Wall Street, and Zionists. Expect us.
I don't think I've ever seen this many people before.
I've never seen any pros or anyone anywhere in the world that have anywhere close to these numbers. That tells you a story.
It's not just Muslims, it's not just Asians. I think every community
A replay of what happened in the lead up to the war with Iraq. The allegations of weapons of mass destruction, the media leaping on to the bandwagon.
Well, in a way, but you know, history doesn't repeat itself exactly once. What I did warn about when I testified in front of Congress in 2002, I said if you want to worry about a state, it shouldn't be Iraq, it should be Iran.
Shows you that the people stand for
But
Palestine.
this government, our administration, wanted to worry about Iraq, not Iran.
Shows you all.
I knew why, because I'd been through the Pentagon right after 9/11. About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who had used to work for me, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran." I said, "Is it classified?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Well, don't show it to me." And I saw him a year or so ago, and I said, "You remember that?" He said, "Sir, I didn't show you that memo. I didn't show it to you."
I'm sorry, what did you say his name was?
I'm not going to give you his name.
So go through the countries again.
Well, starting with Iraq, then Syria and Lebanon, then Libya, then Somalia and Sudan, and then back to Iran. So when you look at Iran, you say, is it a replay? It's not exactly a replay, but here's the truth. That Iran from the beginning has seen that the presence of the United States in Iraq was a threat. A blessing, because we took out Saddam Hussein and the Baathists. They couldn't handle them. We took care of it for them. But also a threat because they knew that they were next on the hit list. And so, of course they got engaged. They lost 1 million people during the war with Iraq. And they've got a long and unprotectable, unsecurable border. So it was in their vital interest to be deeply involved inside Iraq. They tolerated our attacks on the Baathists. They were happy we captured Saddam Hussein, but they're building up their own network of influence, and to cement it, they occasionally give some military assistance and training and advice, either directly or indirectly, to both the insurgents and to the militias. And in that sense, it's not exactly parallel, because there has been, I believe, continuous Iranian engagement. Some of it legitimate, some of it illegitimate. I mean, you can hardly fault Iran because they're offering to do eye operations for Iraqis who need medical attention. That's not an offense that you can go to war over, perhaps, but it is an effort to gain influence. And the administration has stubbornly refused to talk with Iran about their perception, in part because they don't want to pay the price with their U.S. domestic political base, the right-wing base, but also because they don't want to legitimate a government that they've been trying to overthrow. If you were Iran, you'd probably believe that you were mostly already at war with the United States anyway, since we've asserted that their government needs regime change. So, and we've asked Congress to appropriate $75 million to do it, and we are supporting terrorist groups, apparently, who are infiltrating and blowing up things inside Iran. And if we're not doing it, let's put it this way, we're probably cognizant of it and encouraging it. So it's not surprising that we're moving to a point of confrontation and crisis with Iran.
We have confidence because freedom is the permanent hope of mankind, the hunger in dark places, the longing of the soul. When our founders declared a new order of the ages, when soldiers died in wave upon wave for a union based on liberty, when citizens marched in peaceful outrage under the banner Freedom Now, they were acting on an ancient hope that is meant to be fulfilled.
You tell the story about how you tried to find out what they call the Mossad when they deal with publicly?
I thought it was a reasonable question, but the trouble is you can't pick up the phone book. There's no Langley in Israel that you can look up, CIA, or in our case, the Mossad. We thought we should ask, what shall we call it in English? You can translate the Hebrew words, as I said, Mossad is institute, but when they write a letter to their friends in the CIA or the British intelligence, what do they call themselves? It took a while. It was a matter of asking the Prime Minister's spokesman. The best you could do, because officially the Mossad is under the Prime Minister's office. And I think he sort of wondered why you want to know and all that, so we explained. And he came up with the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. I mean, if it were to have initials, it would be ISIS. Just simple words like that. Interestingly enough, kind of a British model.
Was moving too slowly, but the fall of Ramadi has galvanized the Iraqi government. So with the additional steps I ordered last month, we're speeding up training of ISIL forces, including volunteers from Sunni tribes in Anbar province.
למשל, פעולה שבאה בתור מפקד מחלקה צעיר, יחד עם חיילים שהיו 5-6 חודשים בצבא, הגענו לבית בתוך כפר פלסטיני ועצרנו שם ילד בן 14 שהיה אמור להיות לו איזשהו סוג של מידע, ויחד עם שני חוקרי שב"כ עינינו אותו במשך לילה שלם עד שהוא מת, פשוט מת מול העיניים שלנו, תוך כדי עינוי נוראי שאני קצת קשה לי להרחיב עליו.
The Palestinians must come to the table knowing that the bond between the United States and Israel is absolutely, totally unbreakable. They must come to the table willing and able to stop the terror being committed on a daily basis against Israel. They must do that. And they must come to the table willing to accept that Israel is a Jewish state and it will forever exist as a Jewish state.
Israel. this I will tell you. Your day is gone. And if you decide to become an open group of anti-Semites, your days will be numbered. Someone from the Jewish Special Forces will take you out.
As a Jew, I found close by. So there's this strange malignancy, seems to creep among them. Radicalism. The Jews are born spies. You know somebody who just up to their necks. Basic deviousness. Well, also an arrogance. An arrogance because that's what makes us right. He puts himself above the law.
Are you critical of the Hollywood that makes violence?
I think that I'm angry with some of the Jews. I'm very goddamn angry at some of the Jews. Hollywood is run by Jews. It's owned by Jews. And they should have a greater sensitivity about the issue of people who are suffering.
But I believe that Israel has a powerful stranglehold on the American government. They control both members of the House and the Senate. They have us involved in wars of which we have little or no interest. Our children are coming back in body bags. Our nation is bankrupt over these wars. And if you open your mouth, you get targeted. And if they don't beat you at the poll, they'll put you in prison.
And then, as the officer arrested him, a tirade against Jews. Take me back to that moment as you remember it then. Officer James Mee.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know him? Did you know he was Jewish?
No, I don't think so. Yeah. I don't think so. I found out later. But that's, all.
Why would you have asked him that?
I don't know. You see, it's all, I didn't know if he was or wasn't. I mean, I said horrible things to him. And he was pretty patient.
These are the words.
Mm-hmm.
How horrible does he think they were? I read to him the officer's account of the words he used that night. Expletive Jews. And to Officer Mee, are you a Jew? And the Jews are responsible for all the wars in the world. Are those anti-Semitic words?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And at that point, we were taken for another round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of Mossad. The fact of the matter is, we are coming from a country that experiences terror daily. Our purpose was to document the event.
The 5 Israelis were detained for 10 weeks and finally deported on immigration violations after the FBI cleared them of any involvement in 9/11.
Was this building being used as a front for some kind of Israeli intelligence operation that possibly was doing surveillance on the Arab American community? Were there men celebrating or slapping fives or whatever?
We had received an all points bulletin, and I just happened to see the van, hollered over to my lieutenant. I think that could be the van. We checked it out, and it was. We were all on edge, obviously, so I really wasn't looking to make friends with these people, and neither were the officers that I were with. Once we started talking to them, they were pretty much like, hey, we're not against you, we're with you.
People here are called anti-Semitic. What is your response to that as an Israeli Jew?
Well, it's a trick. We always use it. When from Europe somebody is criticizing Israel, then we bring up the Holocaust. When in this country people are criticizing Israel, then there are anti-Semitic. And the organization is strong and has a lot of money, and the ties between Israel and the American Jewish establishment are very strong, and they are strong in this country. As you know, they have power, which is okay. They are talented people, and they have power, money, and media, and other things. And their attitude is, Israel, my country, right or wrong.
Well, we've done a great brainwashing job on them over the centuries, and especially the last few hundred years. We've just brainwashed them completely. They believe anything we tell them. And, in the meantime, we have a lot of fun around Passover where we steal the children. I mean, we steal 100 to 300,000 children a year just here in this country.
secret negotiation between the Nazis and the Zionists in 1933, which allowed German Jews and their assets to go to Palestine.
كان المخرج من هذه الأزمة هو استقالة بن جمل. استقال حتى لا يوافق على تفتيش بعد الموت. وعاقب الضوء الأحمر بقتل كندي. وهكذا قتل كندي بسبب بعد الموت وإصراره على تفتيشه.
It happened 43 years ago to this date, June 8, 1967, and the survivors of the USS Liberty are demanding a congressional investigation into what happened and acknowledgement that the Israeli Air Force bombed a U.S. intelligence Navy ship.
And tonight, we lead the world in facing down a threat to decency and humanity. What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order.
Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. I want Americans and all the world to know American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations. On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war.
And more than 70 wounded in the pre-dawn storming by Israeli commandos that set off worldwide condemnation and a diplomatic crisis.
The Israeli army were reported to have opened fire on the Mavi Marmara before approaching and storming the ship.
10 days ago, the world watched in horror as men, women, and children were massacred in Syria in the worst chemical weapons attack of the 21st century. And now's the time to show the world that America keeps our commitments.
What shall we call it in English? You can translate the Hebrew words, as I said, Mossad's Institute, but when they write a letter to their friends in the CIA or the British intelligence, what do they call themselves? It took a while. It was a matter of asking the Prime Minister's spokesman. The best you could do, because officially the Mossad is under the Prime Minister's office. And I think he sort of wondered why he wanted to know and all that, so he explained. And he came up with the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. And if it were to have initials, it would be ISIS.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program, for from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I am not asking your newspapers to support an administration, but I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means.
We're conducting an expansionist policy of Israel, and everybody's afraid to say it. They control much of the media, they control much of the commerce of the country, and they control powerfully both bodies of the Congress. They own the Congress. I'm saying this to you right now. Israel gets approximately $15 billion a year from the American taxpayers. That $15 billion is $30,000 for every man, woman, and child. People in my district are losing their pension benefits. But I believe that Israel has a powerful stranglehold on the American government. They control both members of the House and the Senate. They have us involved in wars of which we have little or no interest. Our children are coming back in body bags. Our nation is bankrupt over these wars. And if you open your mouth, you get targeted. And if they don't beat you at the poll, they'll put you in prison.